Welcome back to the Masters of Modern. I'm your host, Alex Kessler, here with my co-host, Ben Bateman. He's back.
What up?
Not just me this week. We are together again, reunited, and it feels so good. How you doing, Ben?
I'm good. I'm excited to be here. I'm glad to have gone to Gen Con. This is taking place after we had an awesome week at Gen Con. We'll talk a little bit about that. I'm sure that we had a great launch of the Kickstarter. Thank you guys all so much for getting behind that. It was super, super cool.
Hopefully by the time this episode releases, we are funded. Right now we are only like $1,500, $1,400 away. We're less than 9% away from hitting our original funding goal of 20K, which is like big shout out to everyone on the podcast who participated. If you haven't yet, obviously make sure to check it out. If we haven't funded yet, please check it out. We're so close to getting over that line. We'd really appreciate it if you could help. If we have crossed that line, we are getting to the next stretch goal. We're going to unlock that winter orb. All the Azorius players come on. You want to be able to get that blue and white D20 die, and that gets us closer and closer to the full set the D6, D4, D8, D10, D12, and D20 set that like is really what we're all reaching for, and there's going to be life spin down counters up there. So really, really appreciate anyone checking out that Kickstarter. You can see the die behind me, but you can also see it here for what we're talking about. It's a big bouncy die. It's spiky, and we appreciate anyone who's been able to help make this happen because absolutely the Kickstarter is dope. It's so exciting that it's been doing so well.
It was, and we were super supported by the community, which was awesome. Like a lot of this episode is going to be kind of about community. Like we're going to be talking about the upcoming Magic events and the handling of a lot of these events and how important the community is to that. And a lot of the reason that we were able to get this Kickstarter to where it is because the community is so awesome and because we have a lot of friends who are excited about the product and wanted to talk about it. And we're really grateful for that. So we'll talk a bit more about that. Gen Con was really fun. It's always such a great event, man. It's just like such a cool, it's not a Magic event, but it feels like the most adjacent to a Magic event that you get. It's like really special.
It's the original Magic event. Magic launched at Gen Con in 1993, right?
I thought it was Dragon Con. Wasn't it Dragon Con? You sure?
Yep, Gen Con. That's why the anniversary that Michael won into the beta draft was at Gen Con. That's why next year. So this whole Magic 30 thing is actually kicking off a series of events that's going to end, I believe, at Gen Con next year. There's going to be a big thing that happens.
Snap.
So
I wonder if we'll get another beta draft next year at Gen Con.
Including me having, actual, as long as we we finish this Kickstarter, we'll have additional of these to sell, as well as, some of the other games are coming out with by that point, which will be cool. Mega Man and Contra will be there to buy. Just more plugs. This is brought by also other things beyond just the Patreon not beyond just the Kickstarter that this is brought to. It is brought to you by our patrons. We have a cool announcement to make about that in a second, or later in the episode. And then it is also brought to you by Channel Fireball, the home of the podcast, and a feature of parts of tonight's conversation. And you can, if you want to watch the podcast, you can watch it there. You can watch it anywhere that podcasts are shared, as well as on the YouTube channel. But also, if you are shopping on Channel Fireball and you use the code the MMcast, it benefits us. You let us know, and you get a little bit of a discount, I believe, as well. So it's definitely worth doing, and you get to buy sweet cards. And why wouldn't you want to buy sweet cards?
I'm going to be buying some sweet cards upcoming here pretty soon, Alex, as we are both going to be attending Magic 30. And at Magic 30, I'm going to be playing in the Modern Magic Championship, in which the winners, there are going to be four of these events, and the top 32 of those events altogether are going to qualify for a hyper competitive top 32, in which the top 8 ends up in a beta draft. Because I didn't get to do it a few years ago, so I'm going to be putting together a modern deck. And guys, this will be like that one time that I lost a bet to Alex and he made me play a real deck. I'm going to probably do it again. I'm going to have to buy some cards I don't have. It's going to be really fun. I haven't played as much Modern recently as I have in the past, and I'm very much looking forward to it. I can talk about it a little bit more on the show, maybe when we get to that section, the M30 section, just what the deck's going to be. But I will be buying my cards from Channel Fireball.
Hi, this is thrown in the beginning. We're going to have a bunch of content on today's episode. I wanted to do a big shout out at the beginning. We have Amanda Stevens joining for the second half of the podcast, and we didn't know that was happening when we recorded the first half of the podcast. So I'm recording this little advert for the advert for the podcast that you're currently watching. So that'll be later on in the episode. And thank you so much for watching. And I'll see you literally in whatever 5 seconds needed. Say hi, Amanda.
Hi, Amanda.
Perfect. All right, we'll see you guys in a second. Absolutely. And so those are get our shout outs, the first two shout outs, and we'll do the middle two in the middle. But today we're talking about so it is a little bit about Magic 30 and Gen Con and conventions in general, and kind of there's this really interesting thing that's happened with Magic 30, and it was happening leading up to it. It just seems to be a culmination of this, and that is that there's kind of been this shift. And the first thing I do want to talk about is almost the history of this, of what Magic influencer means, but then also how they're interacting with the people running Magic and the game itself, and how these live events are happening, and how those events are using those creators to gain support of people going there, interest in people going there, and then how they're being compensated, but also just how they're being organized. And I have here, I think it's 5. Let me confirm. 1, 2, 3, 4. I have four and possibly a fifth, which will be the future. 4 major eras of like Magic celebrity or Magic, and that has existed over time that I wanted to go over, and it kind of addresses like where I think one of the problems is, and it's kind of a lack of organization at the moment, is that there's not really a collective voice of influencers being able to talk to, or even knowing who you're supposed to talk to from an influencer perspective to be able to interact with the events in a way that makes sense. And I'll get that into a second. So
can I guess your 4 to see if I'm on the same page? Because you have your 4 you wrote down, which you're going to tee me up and see but I want to see if we're on the same page. No?
Yeah, guess your 4, and then I'll lay them out.
Okay. Number 1 is the initial Magic on ESPN, John Finkel, Kai, like the first pros where like they were the faces of what Magic was. Even Magic design wasn't talked about in the same way back then, like probably pre 1999, 2000, the first like 5-6 years of Magic.
No. Well, I guess that could be like a proto version. I guess I start right after that.
Okay, so if we are going to go with that, it sounds like
that's holistically in my first one. So my first, what would be your second era?
My second era would be when the pros, when there was enough pros and Magic had an online presence and it started to get written about. You had the LSVs and the Kibblers and the Paulos and that whole generation of people where the pro Magic player was also writing articles about Magic, and they was also working for the websites, and they were grinding, and they were doing GPs, and they were on the gravy train. There was quite a few pros.
So I have those 2 eras combined. I guess you could separate them. The key part of there is that the Magic, the first era of Magic to me is the professional Magic player was the celebrity. Okay. They were the ones creating articles. They were the ones creating content. They're the ones that you wanted to see. And okay, so that's the first era. I'll get into how it was organized. What's the second era?
I would say that era number 2, if you're going Magic Pros or era number 1, era number 2 is the creation of the content creator, like the earliest ones. That would be like when we got in basically, and just before us. So like early 2010s, YouTube channels, Wedge, Professor, Command Zone, us, like the very beginning of Magic podcasts existing, just that whole concept. And we would
like Loading Ready Run getting started, top teching. Yeah.
And there wasn't enough of those people, right? So you'd go to things and like they're like
it's also
there
when
was
Christine started cosplaying originally.
Yeah, there was like 17 Magic celebrities or something, and like
kind of that falls under the second era. So for me, there's the first era, which I called the Wild West, but then also the pro era, where it's only pros, but also the major traveling tournaments were Grand Prix, and those Grand Prix were non-centralized. So there was, tens, if not hundreds, of different tournament organizers around the country, all running those events, but through the framework of the Pro Tour, as well as the Hall of Fame and Wizards directly organizing those groups, that Magic celebrity did have a central kind of management column, right? So you had Elaine Chase and Helen Burgot, Helen Burgot, kind of managing both the pro players from a like helping them if they had issues or giving them the resources they need to know who they need to talk to, and vice versa, having them kind of be like, oh, it would be good if you went to this. These are the Grand Prix that would be important for you to go to as kind and there was also appearance fees, right? If you were in the Hall of Fame, part of getting on the Hall of Fame was, and before the next era, you were given consistent appearance fees. Like every GP you went to, you got X amount of dollars plus buys. Every Pro Tour, you got X amount of dollars and you got a guaranteed invite, right? So there was like a framework about fostering that influencer. And then obviously that came with the articles and everything else that you mentioned. The next era, which is kind of the Star City Games Channel Fireball era, right? Where instead in the United States, the all Grand Prix became Magic Fests, and this was there's a little bit of a gradient here, and so the main two series tournament runners in the United States become Star City Games fostering its own tournament series and Channel Fireball running the GP series. And in that environment, that is when you start seeing content creators that aren't just pro players start really making a name for themselves. Up to that point, the beginning of that was like Prof and the Command Zone, and lesser extents us, more extents Wedge, etc., creating non-pro content. And it was also the beginning of EDH becoming a more championed format, though not what it is today.
I also think there's something interesting in that, which is that, and this is sort of where, and it will end with a greater conversation about this topic, I'm sure. But
yeah,
it used to be that there was pros, they'd get brought out, and then artists would get brought out. Like those were like the two people that like GPs would feature. Like they'd bring artists of the cards to sign stuff. But it was almost like if you were creating content on YouTube, there was no initiative by Wizards or any of these to get you there. Like it was like if you're doing all the work on your own to create a brand, this is the place where you're going to be most recognized and be able to like grow the most if you go yourself, right? But there was no like acknowledgement that those people were doing wonderful, powerful things for Magic yet, unless you were.
And there's like a little like you would. Like, if we were to show up at an SCG event or whatever, the chances that we would show up, especially in the early rounds, the chances that we would show up on a feature camera match was higher because, and especially in those early rounds where other pros had buys, we were the people to look out for.
Right. Yeah, we got to do a few of those. So, and that's like that era of expansion where people started to be like, oh, like I can just like talk about Magic cards and I can play non-competitive formats if I want to, and I can have opinions and like people will enjoy me for my personality because I play something that they also play, is really an interesting place, which gets what I think is the last of the eras, unless I'm skipping one.
Nope, there's two more.
I'm just going to shut up and let Alex do his thing. I thought I knew everything, and I don't know anything.
Well, I mean, I'm interested to see what if you agree what the next era is, at least, and that's the and it's a little bit of a messier one, but it's the MPL Arena Command Fest COVID era. Right,
that's such a dumpster fire. It's not even. I feel like
it's important, right? I mean, it's a dumpster fire of transition, but like it was the moment that like, well, before we jump at that, I do want to go back to the Channel Fireball SCG era because there is a very, very important feature to that era, and that is by centralizing the TOs and content creating houses around Channel Fireball and Star City Games. That is one of the reasons non-pro play content creators, in my opinion, not one of the reasons, because a lot of things were happening at once, including the fosteration of streaming and YouTube, etc. But on top of that, in in-person events, there was organizations on those teams to deal with those influencer levels, right? There were very specific people that we would talk to or friends would talk to, or that would negotiate contracts for them to go to events. And, or if we were going to events, we know who to talk to, like, hey, we're going to be here. What can we do to help? How can we do a panel? How can we participate? And the different levels of compensation for that, from magic boxes to, here, we'll shout you out, that's it, to actual, here's a full stipend, whatever. But there were people at CFB and there were people at SEG that were the people we influencers were talked to and be able to manage. And through that, you see the cosplay community massively explode. With Christine, Olivia, Tappy, etc., being able to work with them to actually create specific event content. The first time we've ever had panels at anything that wasn't a Pro Tour, right? Like the Grand Prix started having just regular panels happening. You had the Magic Fest Vegas's happen. You had all of these really cool things start happening because you started having centralized organizations. And it's where the Command Zone came from. It's because eventually they realized towards the end of it, like, oh, a designated area, partially because a bunch of content creators were in GPLA, and we're like, got kicked out of the actual convention hall and we're sitting on the floor in the food court in LA Convention Center playing Commander with Wizards employees. And it was kind of like, why are we here? We're the people that people, that like, to me, that's almost the moment where there was this big transition from, commander personalities matter, or not just, people aren't just here to see pro players. They're here to hang out with celebrity, from Professor to Wedge to us to the Commanderin to the RC to Wizards employees, etc. Where before that it was like mostly centralized around Wizards employees, and then we get into the messy era.
I think that messy era too, though, you mentioned the MPL, for those that like don't remember, was a brief time where essentially like a certain number of players were sponsored with a salary to play Magic, and you had to fight to get in, and there wasn't that many slots, and it was a restructuring like we've had many times in the last 5 or 6 years of the professional payouts that go into players. And what was interesting about that era, I think, when you look back at it, is it's sort of the ultimate nail in the coffin for the idea of Magic having any real responsibility to foster its own professional circuit. Not to say they don't want it, but to pay for it. Because what they were getting out of those contracts, those players who were doing that, they weren't getting what they wanted with their marketing dollars. And that was the whole point, was we're going to pay a salary to have these competitive players, but we need them to stream and we need them to be ambassadors for the community and grow the brand. And they were like, I don't blame them. Those players, many of them were like, this is a salary on my job. I play so much Magic anyway. I don't want to spend all the rest of my time putting the game on my back. Like, this is my day job. It's like, I right? Like, what, you think I want to like spend time outside of my day job doing just for fun stuff that relates to my day job? Like, I think it was a an awesomely generous idea on Wizards' part to spend the marketing budget that way, but I think it's reflective of how we got to where we got to, which is like,
I think there are parts of it that are unfair, right? Because part of that is also that launched into COVID, right? And that did have a big restructuring. But because of that, things that did happen, content creation decentralized. I tweeted yesterday, where is the number one place people go for content on the internet? And 5 years ago, for Magic content specifically, 5 years ago, the main answers to that would be Star City Games Channel, Fireball, Cool Stuff Inc., TCG Player, Daily MTG. I like discounting the fact that almost every answer had Twitter, because they did ask it on Twitter, which feels like, a biased answer. A lot of the answers are like, though, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube,
yeah,
maybe Channel Fireball and MTG Goldfish were brought up. And part of that is over the last few years, there has been a much more prolific, or Twitch, much bigger prolification of content creators on Twitch, TikTok, YouTube, Twitter, than any card selling website, because the monetization, the community has grown large enough that you can now monetize it on those platforms. For a very long time, one of the reasons Magic had one of the most robust article content streams behind it is because it was being funded by single sales. And now, because Twitch exists, because these other platforms exist, because Patreon exists, thank you, patrons, you can fund your content creation through those resources to some extent. And so you've been able to build much larger followings around not competitive Magic and not article-based Magic than previously there ever was before.
I think it's also fascinating too that the idea of what Commander became, from what Commander was when it started, which was like pros and judges with their 100-card decks playing 15 years ago at like Pro Tours and GPs together, to what it's become now, which is the entry point for this identifying factor as a gamer. Like, it's you get one Commander deck, you build one, or you buy a precon, whatever, and now you can go and hang out in this scene and feel like you have a place that's yours to hang out, where you don't have to win, you don't have to be competitive, you don't have to be there all sharky, and like, the cards that you have, it doesn't matter if you have the most expensive cards or you have a straight out of the box precon. Like, it's about playing the game with people. I think that's the thing, is that the critical mass grew large enough that if somebody gets into this, they become immediately immersed in something much larger than playing standard ever was going to be. It's sure. Totally different.
Well, and like, Wizards was trying to do the esport thing, which is commendable. It just Magic is more like golf, where unless you are a golfer, watching golf is like paint drying, and Magic is not too dissimilar from a visual standpoint. And Arena makes that a lot better, which is why the Arena streaming platform was a lot better for viewership in that way. But the watching experience, there's also something weird, and I know there's people out there that know this more specifically than I do for sure. There's something weird with Wizards and advertising, right? And their relationship with the Pro Tour and advertising is something that's always been really wonky, because for them it is advertising. That for sure I know, right? The entire Pro Tour and Grand Prix circuit, the Grand Prix circuit was at best a net neutral money making experience. The actual Pro Tour, Hall of Fame, all of that is literally came from Wizards' marketing budget, and they realized during the MPL, when they built the Pro Tour circuit as a actual esport environment, they kept it still based around the marketing budget. They didn't allow it to become like you couldn't be a Red Bull sponsor for it, right? Like Red Bull didn't have a team. And then when you had and you couldn't have like gaming supplies or other things advertised on the teams, it was specifically like, no, there is Magic teams, and maybe you're a Magic. Some of the Magic retailers are allowed to do it, Channel Fireball, SCG, etc. But you're not allowed to be like a Coca-Cola brand. You're not allowed to be other brands that are sponsoring these events, or at least then those brands weren't interested. And so that's how the League of Legends ecosystem works, right? The League of Legends esport does get some amount of money and infrastructure from the game itself as a marketing budget, but then a lot of the rest of the money comes from pro players being sponsored by computer companies or keyboard companies or mouse companies or energy drinks so that they can make a living because they have really good viewership. And Wizards just never got to that point. Either it didn't get the viewership, so it was never able to sell it, or its viewership got big enough, but the people that wanted to sponsor it weren't allowed to partner because Wizards is Hasbro and has its own limitations on what they're willing to let you advertise. So it always was kind of this weird, how does that environment make money?
Well, I also think that's kind of my point, though. What I was saying a second ago about Commander is that I think Standard is a less interesting format to me than Modern or Legacy or any Eternal format. They're more fun because I think they're more cool cards, but it doesn't really change the fact that 1v1 paper Magic, and even to some degree, Arena, but not as much, it's not engaging enough as a viewer that it's going to grow exponentially if you get a surge in audience. That surge in audience happened. They just were attracted to a different part of Magic. So the thing that the MPL and that like competitive side of marketing goes into, it didn't matter how many eyes you got on it. It wasn't going to grow to the level that it would have ever been sustainable, because that isn't the greatest. It says on the back of the card, right? The Gathering. Like that is the number one function of what Magic is great for, is that it's the best game ever created. I mean, it's an amazing game on so many levels, but the communal aspect of it is the thing that has ultimately shown now to be more important than anything else the game's ever created. It's the fact that we have 30 million plus worldwide players, and that when you go to these things, like, you just want to hang out with other people who love the thing that you love. It's not about winning and losing. There's a side of it. I like to win, but I don't care if I lose in the same way that I do when I like play the movie trivia Schmodown or I play like a sport. It's different.
Yeah, that's fair. My point more is that there's a model to make the esport of Magic work and fund it. It hasn't been, and I think there's like there are series out there like the NRG series that's going on right now. Like, there are self-sustaining tournament circuits. Star City Games is a great example, right? Star City Games is totally autonomous. That is a tournament series, pro circuit, pro scene, pro influencer based ecosystem that was totally outside of what Wizards is doing. Channel Fireball has also done that in the past. They just ended up being in the right partnership to be able to then just run Wizards of the Coast's version of it, and be profitable in it. So I think that there is a framework there. But I think part of it is like which is where that kind of era ends, which is like COVID happens at the same time that like what a Magic celebrity means changes again, because it starts including real celebrities. You get Post Malone, you get Cassius to some extent, you get some people that are Magic creators become real celebrities like Jimmy and Josh, and so you start also seeing Wizards spending
I
money
think the
on like
size of their audience too, like Jimmy Josh and Prof, they've gotten so famous now within the community. They're like, we're talking like hundreds of thousands, millions of fans. Like if you're putting out a YouTube show that can get a 500,000 to 1 million views every episode, and you're the star of the show, that's legit fame. That's a real huge audience. It's very different, right? Like I've been a micro influencer, micro celebrity on various platforms, and I know the difference between 10,000, 20,000 views and 1 million views. It's a very different number.
right. And so that happens around not pro play, right? Like that's the other piece to it, is that these big celebrities are happening around Commander and the social aspect of the game. And so then we exit COVID, which that's debatable, but we enter the world that we're in now, and live events are coming back, and Wizards to some extent rushes out the gate. They have this new Commander set coming out. Channel 5 does this massive event. I was able to make it, and it's stunning. It feels like Grand Prix and Magic Fest are back. There's a massive modern tournament. There's a big command zone area. There's a bunch of cool artists and creators are there, and it feels like we're back. And then stuff goes dark for a second, and then Wizards is having this new Commander set, Baldur's Gate, come out. Plus, neither of these are standard legal sets. There's a 2x2 is coming out, and the conventions are back, right? Like Gamma happens, and Gen Con's going to happen, and all of these other conventions and Comic Cons are these massive successful events. Wizards partners with every TO in the country, again bringing back to the old era where it was decentralized, and fires off 15, not just the country, the world, and fires off 15 command fests. And they're a little weird. They have stipulations where they have to be specifically Commander focused. You're not allowed to run Magic tournaments at them of any legitimate size. Preferably, the only product available to do any type of side event are Commander Legends or other more less conventional draft formats, more casual focused draft formats. So not like you can't do a new Capenna limited event, right? You have to do mystery boosties or chaos draft or two-headed giant, etc. So they have specific events. Each of the different TOs are running it separately, and they have some amount of ability to do something different. But the one stipulation is you're not allowed to run a big event at this event. That's the one thing Wizards say you can't do. At the same time,
you were rifling off examples, and I literally said the 3 that are not legitimate. I was trying to say Battle Bond is what I kept trying to get to, or I was trying to say Conspiracy, but I think I literally said Plane Chase, I said Arch Enemy, and I said another one. I said the 3 that are not draft formats, so I just wanted to clarify.
That's fair. I got you. I was letting it go. I wasn't going to bring it up. I wasn't going to call you out. So you have, at the same time, they made the partnership with DreamHack, where DreamHack ends up being this like the return of the Pro Tour, where they've created a new Pro Tour qualifier system, a new tournament series. They have partnered with the DreamHack events, which is an already convention running event series, where at those DreamHack pro gaming competitive events, they will do Magic Pro Tours as we move forward, with a world championship and bringing Pro Tour play back, which is like a very exciting announcement with a different tournament organizer. And then additionally, opening it up the series beyond that. So like NRG series, which is doing their own thing. You have, conventions are back. So Gen Con had its own events at going on. And then towards the end of the summer, last minute, they announced the Magic 30 series, which is the first one's happening. And literally today, tickets went on sale and they sold out entirely, which is in Las Vegas. It's this massive,
completely sold out.
All of the VIP packages sold out. So both the command zone sold out, the other $350 tier sold out, the 700 tier sold out, everything above a certain level sold out. Sold out in 6 hours. That event happening in Las Vegas is kind of the next Magic Fest Vegas, with a big modern tournament. Ben described at the beginning that you can win a Black Lotus, etc., and win a beta draft. Oh, no, sorry, you win a beta draft.
The beta draft, yeah.
Ironically, at the 3 weeks later, the Summit event, MTG Summit, which we're currently slated to go, is happening in Utah, hosted by Brandon Sanderson's tournament organizing company, or not tournament, Brandon Sanderson's convention organizing company, and partnering with Kingdoms TV, the Magic channel. friends of the cast. And if you're going, use the code KESS because it helps us out. Speaking of sponsorships, and they're doing an event that announces before the Magic 30 announces any of the information, announces about 2 weeks earlier, and matches a slate of like 30 major creators, from Sheldon Menery to Brandon Sanderson to Jim and the Spike Feeders in general, going to the event. So that's the world we're in now, and that's the modern era, right? That's the last of my 5 eras, and maybe 6 if you want to include the like early ESPN, the Ocho, Magic era.
I just think the only reason I use that as an illustration, it's so early when those early pros, but what's so interesting about that is that those guys of that initial earliest run of pros, only a few of those made it into the next run that were even around when you and I were like getting into Magic competitively. A lot of those guys and those memories of like those early 5 years of Magic, it was people didn't understand what a competitive card game was yet. Magic was the first competitive card game of its type. So like there wasn't a clear understanding of the fact that like it was like trying to be esports so far ahead of esports. So I think you can conflate the two into one experience, but it does realistically go from like 1994 to like probably like 2006. It's like probably 10 years. So it's a pretty long era. I feel like there's almost two halves of it.
Sure. I just don't think the concept of influencers existed before 2002.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Right, you were just a celebrity. You were a famous person.
Yeah, right.
And or you were a company trying to push someone as a athlete on a ESPN like channel, right? Like influencer is a little harder to pitch when it's just like active celebrity. You were a rock star, you were an actor, or you were an athlete. And those are, if you weren't one of those 3 things, maybe you were a news anchor. You were a talk show person, which I would, in some ways is actor. You were an entertainer, comedian, etc. So influencers just, it's different than now where like my following is so big that I am invited to think, I am used as an advertising platform into myself. And so that's the area right now. And what's interesting about now is this is the one time, and this is what I think one of the issues that a lot of these events are running into, is this is the one time that Magic the Gathering tournament series or conventions, if you will, are decentralized, right? There's 18 different organizers just in the US, plus DreamHack, plus Summit, plus, those, not including Summit, that are just Wizards run. There's a Wizards ran one with Magic 30, and then there's independent ones like the Energy series and the Summit events. And these are all decentralized, but there's no framework like the Hall of Fame to mitigate the fact that also all of the main influencers of the game are spread all over the place, right? There's TikTokers like Anomaly, there's YouTubers like Jimmy and Josh, or YouTubers / content creators like Joe. There's cosplayers like Tappy and Olivia. There's streamers like Amy the Amazonian or Mental Misplay. There's the CAG and the RC. There's artists. There's altruists. There's proxy people. There's so many. There's people like Inklin. Like there's so many different versions of what having a following at one of these events are, which is great, right? Like that's the point, is that you could just inviting a subset of the best of each of those subcategories to a Magic Command Fest, having them all arrive, and then letting them and giving them an ability to even pitch like, oh, I want to do a TikTok booth area, or I want to do a panel, or I want to do, custom card drawing that I'll do, or I'll do cosplay, or, whatever, like creates a convention experience. But there's so many different organizations running these events on their own that none of those people currently have a person to talk to. It's not like when Wizards, because before, when there was a Wild West of tournament organizers, all of Pro Play was basically under the Pro Play system. All of Magic infamy or influence. So there was Helen and Elena and
Elaine,
and you would talk to Wizards, right? Wizards was managing those people in a way that benefited them, and then benefited Wizards, because Wizards was cultivating this slew of influencers that helped pitch their game, made their game more successful over time. And I think that's the starting point, 30 minutes into this episode, the my thesis of what's wrong right now.
I wanted to add too, one of the things that you sort of suggested here, but I want to make clear for people is that when it comes to, if you're booking a convention, any convention in the world, like let's say it's like an entertainment convention, San Diego Comic-Con or any of the Comic-Cons around the world, and you want to book talent, right? Like you're going to book talent for your convention, a certain number of actors from certain shows, movies, whatever. It's pretty easy to find. Oh, I want this person. Who are they repped by? If I Google who they're repped by, I'll be able to find their rep. IMDb Pro lists it. Like, it's not hard to find. You'll find their rep and you'll book it through their manager or their publicist or their agent. But like, if they're a person of note, Magic celebrity and influencers, by and large, some have agents, some don't. They're harder to track down. It's a little weirder. So not only is there not like a centralized list of people to go after, but often those people that you're going after, it's a different experience going after any of them. Some of them know exactly what they're doing. Some of them have no idea what they're doing. And I feel like we had lunch with somebody who is involved in tournament organization at Gen Con and had a kind of a conversation a little bit about just what, from the perspective of a content creator, like from our perspective, when we go to a major event, like what is it that we're looking for? Like, obviously any creator wants to feel taken care of, but specifically, what are like the little things? And it's interesting that those little things that are standard, like they're completely standard in many industries, if you are anywhere as any form of talent, they're not even really considered at some of these Magic events. They're like, you almost have to ask for them. It's very strange. It's like there's a disconnect between the concept of somebody who is a creator, like an entertainment creator within this field, and then the people who are trying to create an entertainment experience. And they, in theory, they should blend perfectly, but they don't. They haven't. And I think that's a little bit of the issue, is like that it's not quite clear yet what these things are and what the value of the talent that these things really is. And I think that's rad.
And some of it is learning, right? Like the onus of this conversation is the Magic 30 event, because this is infamously, at least if you're on the internet, a event that has just sold out, from a attendance perspective, at least from the main event, or the main events, as well as the command zone, enough people paid to go to it to sell it out within 6 hours. So it's a big enough of a draw there, but like specifically and weirdly limited in these type of people that they've invited, right? There's about 8 big key people, and friends of the cast, like all of these amazing guests, some Wizards employees, some out of Wizards, and a list of unannounced people that are also included, that they for some reason haven't been telling who's going to be there. Like they've been slow rolling this content. But then there's also a list of people that are like Shivam, there is an RC panel. There's an RC and CAG panel. And there are RC and CAG members who were not invited to go to the event.
Well,
unless they pay to go.
The M30 thing, my experience, and I like transparently, we have done this podcast and been in the Magic content creation space now for 8 years. We've talked about it. Like, we've made little to no money on this show. In fact, I would argue we've more than likely lost money. We've always done it because we've liked it. We've tried to keep it alive and constantly evolve it because we love it. We love the game and the community. And we've been really fortunate throughout our time doing it to be able to go to events and meet people. And oftentimes we'll get a comp pass to a command zone or something cool like that. Something small that's really nice, that makes the event better for us. And I think it's fascinating that at this event, there's like a billion side events that are really cool. I don't know if you've looked at the event schedule, but it's nuts. Like it's my dream. It's every wacky throwback draft format, every chaos draft. There's a modern tournament for a beta draft. You can't book any of those side events ahead of time. You can't reserve your spot if you haven't purchased a ticket. And I don't even necessarily need to play in a command zone, right? Like, I like to play Commander now. It'd be fun. That's what I would hope to be doing. But if I got there and they were like, hey, the command zone's too competitive at this event, it's just, we can't accommodate you, I'd be like, that's okay. I'll play Commander with my friends at other tables when they can, or back at the hotel, and I'll hang out here and I'll sign up for these side events. But the idea that like the only 3-day pass that I could even buy that was even like remotely reasonable was $160 just to be there, to allow me to then purchase side events, right? Like, I spent almost $400 today on my entry and my one side event I wanted to do, not knowing if I will even be able to go into the command zone. There's a party. There's like an add-on party that like I was like, I mean, I hope to go to that party, but like it feels like an entry to the command zone or like an invite to this party would be like the things that I would have sort of wondered if even creators at our level might get.
And I don't, and like the point of this episode, and I want to make clear is because like, you know, as Ben kind of said at the beginning there, I'm very comfortable in like my mid-tier existence as a Magic content creator.
I was happy to pay. Like, I was going to do it.
Yeah. But this is kind of where like, you know, the onus came from is like, but there are people that are bigger than me that like, there are stuff about this event that is like theoretically panels for them should exist, right? Like if there's an RC CAG event, multiple CAG members aren't invited or included seems weird. And much larger streamers than us not invited or and then for the last 4 days questioning like, oh, should I go to this event? It is really expensive. And because of that, and because I'm like, if I go, I am benefiting this event and it's going to cost me more than I would get paid to do something like this in general. Why? And so there are a group of people that like felt like, but then at the same time, events sold out. But on the opposite end, there's the summit event, which, you know, is a you know, a ton of creators are going to, and is based almost purely off of that attendance, right? Like they were able to pull off a really pretty cool, significant amount of creators to attend, and put up a tournament that has a Black Lotus at it, and like there's a cool event going on, and that also seems to be attended at a pretty high level. So, and that's in Utah. That's not a Magic Fest Vegas, right? That's not a Vegas location. That's a relatively hard to travel to Salt Lake City. And that's now also kind of being talked about as one of the main events to go to this fall. And you have these two events that had almost the opposite plan against each other, which is one was like, we're going to focus on here's the top 10, the top 20 Magic content creators that are more employees almost, and the other one's like, we're going to invite the big content creators that are widespread from spike eaters to etc and see who we can get. And both are working. And this goes all the way back to the Command Fest, right? Like there is a Command Fest where a bunch of people were you know, people got flown in, and different levels of those creators were able to be supported there. There were events that had happened the same weekend, and that group was like, we're not going to invite anyone. Just we're in Seattle, so I guess people will show up and we'll advertise whoever tells us they're going to be here. You know, then that's like drastically different effects. And it's
I also
interesting.
I want to point out really fast on the note of like the different approaches. If you look at the different packages on the Magic 30 website, one really interesting part of this, and I'm actually a little confused by this. So the Sapphire package, which is the only package you can buy as an adult for the whole weekend that doesn't include the command zone, it's $160, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in the 160, it includes 2 Dominaria United collector's boosters and a mystery booster. So the cost of a collector booster is like, I don't know, what is it, $15-$16 or something like that. And a mystery booster, probably it's a little less than that. Maybe it's $10. But like, there's essentially retail products included in this that total somewhere in the range of like $40. And they're kind of random. It's 2 boosters and a mystery booster. It's not like it's not a draft set. It's not like there's something you're supposed to do with them. There's just packs that you're going to open that are cool to have. But it's like, but why? Like, just so it's a higher ticket price? That's so confusing to me.
I mean, I honestly, okay. So on this podcast, we have forever been pretty big proponents of Magic Fest should be conventions. And at conventions, if you have the dollars behind it, you pay a fee for the full weekend, right?
Yeah.
So from that perspective, I get it. And this is kind of my point with the content creator angle. If Wizards had spent, if Wizards just sent out an invite to 1,000 content creators, or even 100 content creators that I can think of, and was like, hi, we will give you hotel rooms in Las Vegas this weekend and give you full access to the event. And if you want to do some cool projects, we'll even consider paying you to do those things. Will you come? They would have had, and if they had done that 3 weeks ago before the event got announced, and a bunch of people of different levels, I don't even want it to be me. Pretend it's not me.
Yeah.
Like they would have had a much different response on Tuesday. That would have been a much more successful launch. Now, financially, it's doing well, but the main event isn't sold out. And kind of the point is, I think like they thought, you know what, we're gonna, instead of getting creators, which feels like this a nebulous thing, we're gonna give these packs that we just have extras of and add them to each of the packages. So it feels like you're buying packs when you're getting entry to this event. And it's just kind of like, why am I paying to be in the command zone? They've even announced that there's a separate area that has free play. Now it's probably going to be, you know, the 6 big circle tables by the cafeteria that have food either on them and never get cleaned up, or there'll be free play events that if there's a draft that needs to happen in there, you get kicked out of that space, which sucks. But that 160, like, I think it's good to have those. I think it's good to have there be an opening dollar amount that you have to pay to attend these events. I don't think that is a problem.
I agree completely, but that's my point, right? $160 is like, this could cost $120 and not include the boosters. And it would be like, from a retail perspective, it would still be like, oh, I still have to pay $120 to just go. That's enough.
But remember, like, packs aren't free for Wizards, but they're not. The cost in the packs are development and opportunity, right? It's not the cost to make a collector booster from a like actual sense to manufacture a collector booster is not that expensive compared to its value on the market because of what's inside of it based on the IP that's built around Magic. Right.
I guess my point is, like, imagine that, again, I'm just, this food for thought, because I don't, there's numbers behind this.
So my point is that the 160, you were paying $160 because that's how much they needed to charge people to attend at that level for this event to do what they're trying to do. It has nothing to do with the packs. The packs are them giving it away to people to make it feel like it's worth doing.
Sure. And that's understandable, but they also still had to plan the event. They still had to come up with these different tiers, and they still had to say, okay, well, what we want to do is this, so we're going to charge this. And in my mind, I'm almost like, okay, well, what if
my point is that you saying if it cost $40 less, I wouldn't need the packs and I would still pay for it. My point is that they needed to charge at a minimum $160 for attendance, and they knew that was a lot more than it's ever been before. And them throwing these random packs in there was them trying to say, we know that this is weird that you have to pay this amount to attend this event. Here's free money, basically,
and you
that we
get something out of it. No, it's like, I understand that, but I still go back to my same initial point, which is they still had to set these tiers based on the cost of what they wanted to do at the event. They wanted to do tons and tons and tons of cool things. And if you look at the side events and you look at what's like being put into those, whether it's prize support or it's just the availability of all of those different old packs and things like that, like, they obviously had to spend a lot.
You're paying for those packs, right? Like, well, all of those events cost significant amounts of money to be able to attend to. Like, those aren't different than any other GP. They just did a good job of correlating it for this event, right? Like, the thing that's weird is this is the big question mark I have, and we're going to find out more, right? They're going to announce more people are attending and etc. It's weird that they didn't do some of this before people paid to be a part of the event, and also and like, this is a true statement, right? There are content creators that like are either they're like, I'm biting the bullet because I realize that this is a networking event that I need to go to, or I'm going to have fun, or I have friends that I want to see there, or I can afford it, luckily, that are going to go and paid for it already. A, paid for themselves, and B, paid taking a ticket from someone else that wanted it since it's sold out. There's the other slew of people that were like, oh, I guess I'm not going to go. Too bad. I can't afford it. And now, even if they do get an invite to go, it's weird. And so, like, it's just like there was some amount of dollars or some planning that went into it that seems like very, very, very messy. This felt like a very, and part of the reason I want to record this is because obviously the launch was successful from a dollars of people wanting to attend, because A, not everyone is the people on Twitter, but B, it's just like a very messy event for like, for no reason. Like, all of the bad blood on this feels like they could have done
so avoidable. No, that's the good.
That's the thing that. And what is the command zone? What is the $350 value of the command zone? Right? Because
I don't know.
Because it's like, of the 7 celebrities they've announced, a few of them play Commander, but like, if there are 700 people that are, say 200 people allowed in that event, in the command zone area. That's the max cap that they capped it out. There's this 5 people that I know on that list that actually would play Commander, because like Maro's not going to play Commander, Richard Garfield doesn't play Commander. They're going to be around doing events, but they're not going to do the command zone. Even if they played 100% Commander the entire time, all 3 days of the weekend, maybe they get 15 games in, and that's like being very generous, and they would be exhausted and would never want to play Commander again. And that's, so I guess 15 times 3, so 45 people per influencer gets to play with an influencer, which is like, I guess everything, but it's weird. That's weird. That's such a limited amount of stuff that's happening there. And
it's also, don't you also feel like they're as cool of influencers and Magic celebrities as they are? The ones that are, because again, you just said Richard Garfield and Mero aren't going to play Commander. The ones that are there, like, they're people that are awesome. They also go to events. It's not the first time they've ever gone to an event. They go to events. If you go to Magic events, you've probably seen them or maybe played with them. Like, it's such an elevated price.
Paying for the command zone at Magic the Gathering Las Vegas last year, and if you were in the command zone, you were constantly around 30 to 80 different people that you normally would just interact online and watch their YouTube content, getting to hang out with them, getting to play games with them, getting to be a part of that experience, which I think is worth it to some people. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe like it's but like it's $350. That's the point, right? To be in this area costs you as much. It's $50 less than going to Coachella.
Dude, I mean,
it's $150 less than EDC, right? So like, it's $50 less than EDC. It's $150 less than a weekend at Coachella. But all you're getting at this is just some packs and a place to sit and play Commander at a convention hall in Las Vegas. That's my point, right? Like I'm fine if that's worth it, I guess. But like the argument for the influencer side of things is more like that brings value to those areas in a way that I have to imagine people are interested in. Otherwise, where else is that money? Because like the other side is panels, right? Like we've ran panels for CFB. We've done the trivia thing, and I've done, I participated in Tappy's match game show stuff that she's done, and those are awesome. And we had great audiences that were super, super stoked for those events. And there are a ton of other people I know that would put panels off to make something cool and exciting at this event. But there's like 6 panels total for all 3 weekends.
No, I think the thing that's the most surprising about it is, like, again, this is what that conversation we had at Gen Con was like. Okay, so imagine you are a micro influencer in the space all the way up to the biggest. If you're talking about the biggest of the biggest, like the ones who are announced, the top ones, those people, there's no question those people are getting flown in. And they should be. They have huge audiences. They're getting taken care of, I'm sure. I don't know what their deals are, but I'd be shocked if not, right? But those people have agents. Like, those people have probably some level of management if you get to that size. Everybody else, it's not like really in Wizards' best interest to shell out tons of money for every person, because it does get expensive. Like, we've been an organization for event creation. We've also had to bring people to various shows. It adds up really fast. If you're trying to get people, flying people in, getting hotel rooms, paying for food, stipends, like, if you do that for a lot of people, it becomes very expensive. However, I don't think that that's necessary. I actually think it's a much lower barrier to entry for most of the people that they would get involved. You mentioned hotel rooms. I don't even know if that's necessary. I legitimately think if they were to reach out to people and go, hey, we've got Command Zone, we give you access. We've got this party, and you can get an invite to it, and you're just welcome to come and hang out. And we want you there. And like, is there anything you'd like to be involved in? They invite, like, literally, I would be like, okay, I'll stay on a couch in somebody's suite. I'd stay on your couch suite. If like I was like, I'm going to get free entry, I'm going to go to this party. I don't have to get my ticket. I'll pay for my one-side event. I get to be there, interact with people, promote the game, say great things online about this. That's all that would be required. And I think that many of the people who are at the same size of level of you, or much bigger in Magic than I am, or myself, who's much smaller in Magic, I still think we would be pretty happy to get even that level of support. And that doesn't cost much. That's pretty inexpensive for Wizards, which is where the real head scratcher of this event comes in, is like, this isn't the first Magic event they've run. The people inside know the people of our level. They know lots of them, hundreds of people. They like are aware of who we are. We get preview cards. We get involved in things. Like, they know we're on their radar. Like, and I use us as the example, but like people of our level are definitely on their radar. And that's the thing that is just like the event's just a head scratcher in that way.
Well, and that's like part of the reality shift, right? We've now moved to a convention model, but no one's managing parts of this in a way that I think would be nice if they did. And or they're doing it at such a top level where like, oh no, we're only going to get the top 10 people, the top 20 people, and that's all we're going to focus on. But then they're like, the part of that's going to blow up in this face is my point, right? Is like, I feel bad for the 10 people so far that's been advertised. That sounds exhausting if you're one of the only 7 people are traveling to this event to go hang out with. And to your point, I agree. I think like there's tiered levels of, and that was the mistake the DreamHack event happened, right? We had Tobin on the podcast and he explained it. He no longer has that DreamHack, and he famously kind of like gathered every email of every person in the Magic community that makes content and sent everyone an invite to go to the DreamHack event for free. He gave them entry, literally what we just described. The problem being that he emailed everyone from prof to, you know, a up and coming TikToker with less than 5,000 followers the exact same invite email.
Yeah.
And there was like some mistakes there where it was like, it sounded like he was offering to have you stay and get a ticket, but in reality it was just a ticket to the event and entry to be able to participate.
Right.
Which, you know, now I think with a dollar amount behind it, this widely advertised, I think people definitely would accept that as a package. But I also think you need to be specific, right? You don't offer Prof that package. You don't offer Jimmy and Joff that package. They're different. But there are other people that like, hey, I'm a streamer. I do really, really well for Magic. There's a bunch of people that would be hyped to go hang out with me. You can include me. Let me attend your event. Let me, without me having to like, it shouldn't be a massive expense for me to go to your event because there isn't a value for that streamer to go other than their own entertainment purposes if it's something that's worthwhile to go to. And for a lot of people, this event is very expensive. And when you're in the content creation game, especially if this is your full-time job, you're not making infinite dollars. So
And you're also not like if you're a streamer, you're not making content while you're at the thing. Like
right.
if you make YouTube content, you can film some stuff. You're a vlogger, but if you're a content creator whose job it is to play Magic on camera, and that's what you do, and you want to go to this thing, and you normally stream every day, and now you go to this event, and you take 4 days off, that costs dollars. That costs money to go, right?
Yeah. So it's and like this event's going to be fun. I don't want to like rag on it too hard. It's more between the messiness of the Command Fest and the fact that there's like 18 different organizations all running these things differently, and it's up to every single content creator to do this on their own. When previously there was people at Wizards that you could communicate with and would be an assistant in kind of making sure that you were either taken care of or knew what was going on or knew who you needed to talk to. None of those resources exist now. And if anything, they're relatively gate kept, which not only just hurts, and like the last part of this is like, not only does it hurt like, you know, mid-tier creators, etc., but also just like creators of color, creators from other backgrounds. Like there's a whole thing going on where you like have to apply if you're a person of color to attend Magic 30 and prove to them why you're an interesting enough person to be able to attend, which like is very yucky.
Really?
And definitely
That's like on the website?
yeah, there's like a whole application process. Like on one hand, it's a grant to allow you know, persons of colors and access to be able to go to this event if you're able to apply for it. But at the same time, it's also like we didn't know enough people that fell under this paradigm, so we're making you all apply to it with your back, you know, what you do for a blah, and it's like
Weird.
it's weird, and it's also kind of like you couldn't think of more creators to invite and feature at this event that
A better way to do this.
yeah, this is all bad. There's just a
Yeah,
lot of messiness.
It's definitely one of the weirder things about definitely one of the weirder like I'm surprised they would have an event of this level of profile, of like this level of excitement, that would be this thrown together. I texted a friend of ours who we've known for a long time, who's kind of a little more on the inside of this sort of stuff, and I heard back like it just seems like it's coming together pretty fast. It was like that was the response I got.
Yeah.
That's the vibe, right? That's like that's definitely the online vibe that I'm getting all over everywhere. Just seems like it's moving very fast.
this is the last piece, and it's supposed to be the celebration of the 30th anniversary of Magic, and this is the most whale focused event Magic has ever created. Do you know the term whale?
No.
So it comes from the digital freemium gaming space, right? Like Candy Crush or Clash of Clans. Those games make the majority of their money from whales, and that's people that have a lot of disposable income and spend hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars on their game. Like, they don't make most of their money from like random people that'll like, I'll drop $5 on this game when I first get it just to like get started, and or like, oh, I spent like 10 hours on this game, I'm willing to spend up to $60 because that's how much I'd spend on a regular video game. And I've spent that, not those. These are the people that are like, oh no, maybe they're actually putting their life savings into this in a way that's unhealthy level of people.
I see what you're saying. This event is focused on bringing in a smaller audience with a lot of money.
Yeah, exactly. It's focused on that weird specific audience at its price point, because it's not offering enough to attend to make it worth a Coachella weekend, right? Like, Magic could do that. There's a version of a Magic convention. I would even argue that Magic Las Vegas last year was comparable to a Coachella weekend. If like to get in was $150 and to be a part of the command zone was another $150, and then whatever $50 to $100 you spent on events past that, like, was your weekend. That's how much Coachella costs, and it was worth it. I like, and as someone who like was only there for 48 hours, it was worth it. So like, I think there's a version of a Magic event with the right community focused feel to it that is worth that price point. This one feels like, oh, if you can spend this money, you will, right? Like, this is maybe not worth it to most people, but yeah, sure, this is going to be a big event. I want to make sure I don't miss it, so I'm gonna spend money that I have available because I can afford it. And and it locks out that weird level of content creator of people from more distant, that don't have the money to be able to attend in a way that and there's no one to talk to. It's the very, very weird. It's a bad vibe, I guess, is the only way I could say it from a content creator perspective, that like you don't want from the Magic 30th anniversary kickoff event.
Right. I
agree.
Like,
if this was just a Magic Fest as it used to be, I think there's a version of it that people are more and then has like really cool, expensive side events that you have to pay to attend. I think a lot of people would have been really hyped.
Yeah, I mean, it does. Your point about the side events, like, I don't think they subsidize the beta draft and all those old packs with the cost of entry, because it's $150 a person. I don't think I get anything for entering that tournament. I'm pretty sure I enter that tournament, and if I scrub out 2 rounds in, I think I'm just down $150. Like, which is like way more expensive than any competitive tournament I've ever entered into, and also reflects a lot more of what, like, something I'm excited about, which is like the idea of really, really, really high EV if you do well. But it also means that if every one of the pods is capped at like either 224 or 256, probably, and it's $150 a person, that's a lot of money. That's a very high dollar amount.
Yeah, and we're running out of time too. So I do want to do a few things before we finish the conversation. First off is trivia for our patron. This is patron sponsored trivia. So every week we do a game of trivia, and this is how it's going to work. And thank you, patrons, for providing the question. We're making a bet. If you have to get this question right, you comment in the below. I'm going to ask Ben the question. He's going to him and ha. You're going to answer below with the answer. If you comment below with the correct answer, you win our adoration, and we'll like your comment, and we greatly thank you. If you mess it up though, you have to hit that like and subscribe button. That's the rules. We don't make them. You're stuck doing it. And that's the way the cookie crumbles. So Ben, here's the trivia question. There is a card type, a retired card type, that appears on only 2 printed cards. Name the type. And this is from Brandon S. Russell on from our patron.
A retired card type that appears on only 2 cards.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it can't be Interrupt, because that was on quite a few old cards. And is it It's probably one of the old like enchant world or like poly artifact, mono artifact. Like it's in that range, is what I'm guessing. Tired card type. I'll say artifact, mono artifact. Oh no, Mana Source was an old. They used to put that on cards. I'll say Enchant World.
No, that is not correct. There's actually quite a bit of those. The answer. So this, lock in your comments. Get those comments below. The answer is Mana Source, and it was only ever printed on dark ritual and Culling the Weak had it printed on them as their card type.
You didn't hear me mumble it. I mumbled it just before I landed on my last one.
I know. I'm not. Poker face, baby. We're going to Vegas. So if you did get that wrong, hit that like and subscribe button. If you commented correctly, thank you so much for commenting and hanging out with the algorithm. We'd super appreciate it. Once again, we are in the middle of a Kickstarter. You can kickstart these drop Dot D20s, and we definitely appreciate it. A great deal. So make sure to check that out for sure. We have either surpassed our goal or about to surpass our goal. And you could be helping us get the winner orbs out there, get those Azorius players, blue-white players, the color dice of their choice. Plus, it gets us closer to all of our other stretch goals, which are really awesome for everyone. All right, hello. This is a small segment within the segment within the segment. We did this whole episode talking about what's going on with Magic 30 and all the other different kind of conventions that are going on this year, alongside how Wizards' relationship with influencers has changed over the years. And we wanted to get Amanda on, who has a background in this space specifically, alongside other parts of it, and kind of get her feedback and talk through the whole situation with voices that aren't just me and Ben. And
which are very lovely voices.
Thank you. That's our, we were a voice for radio. Ben has a face for camera, though. Hello, Amanda. How are you?
Hi, everyone. I'm Amanda Stevens. I am a former level 1 Magic judge. I am a returning Magic content creator. I took a very long break, and basically the professor dragged me back into doing content creation, and now I'm doing that for Commander's Herald, where I write about diversity, equity, inclusion in Magic. So like recently I did an article about how we make our stores more inclusive and inviting. I just did a piece this week, which will probably be last week by the time this airs, on blackness in Magic. But also, I'm a diversity, equity, inclusion professional, and I've been working in gaming and conventions for like the last 11, 12 years. So I have a bit of a perspective on the way cons are formed, the way that they reach out to guests, the measures that they take for diversity, that I think that is somewhat missing from some of the Magic discourse surrounding Magic 30 on Twitter, is that a lot of people's only reference point is GPs, Magic Fests, SCG cons, and now Magic 30, and they've never really gone to like a PAX or a Gen Con or a New York Comic Con.
Right. Well, that's one thing that, like, even in hindsight of us recording the original episode, that like clicked for me is I've been going to San Diego. I mean, I this pass has expired 3 years running now, but because COVID. But I attended San Diego Comic-Con, which is one of the hardest events to get into in the country, one of the largest fan conventions, if not the largest fan convention in the country, off of a creator badge for years. Like, they have a system in place for people to be like, hi, this is my background. This is why it's exciting for me to go to your event. I can fill in these 3 check marks. I have this amount of followers on these platforms. This was my reach. These are the things I'm creating to help you. Let me go to your event without having to pay for it. And that's not necessarily
pay me. And a lot of Reed Pop cons, for those of you that don't know, Reed Pop is basically the company that runs conventions. They run San Diego Comic Con, Emerald City Comic Con, New York Comic Con, all of the PAXs, and a bunch of other cons. And what is very common in a lot of these cons, and even Gen Con, which isn't run by Reed Pop, is having multiple different ways to attend the convention. There is obviously the like different badges that you get you different access to different types of things, But there's also like the media badge, and as you know, Alex is talking about the creator badge. This is something that PAX has, Gen Con has, and some of the Comic Cons have. And as Alex said, you apply for this, and you have to check off some benchmarks. And sometimes they'll let very small creators in because like they like their work, or they think that this will be a great growth opportunity or symbiotic thing where it's like, oh man, look at this really small creator we gave a badge to. Makes them look good, makes the creator feel great. Everyone's happy.
Right.
This is very common in nerd conventions, just like across the board. And so like the first critique that a lot of people had for Magic 30 is like, hey, this looks like a really small creator guest list. It's like Josh and Jimmy from the Command Zone, to unnamed people from the Commander Rules Committee, to unnamed people from the CAG, Gavin Verhey, Mark Rosewater, Richard Garfield, and like the Studio X team. And people were like, hold on. What about like John Finkel? What about like Kai Bood? What about, you know, even Paulo Vito Damaderosa? Like, even before we get, like, I'm looking at this as like a like Magic history thing.
Yeah.
How do you not name like event. How do you not pick like 5 people from the Hall of Fame and just be like, hey, these guys are coming? Right. And then sure, in this like modern era of Magic where like content creators have a lot more weight than they used to, just Josh and Jimmy, where's like Loading Ready Run, where's, you know, the Professor, where's you know, or modern even Magic Cast, you know, like
yeah. But like Z-Bex, or like we have Christine, like there's big, and some of these people might be going, right? That's the other weird.
So there's probably I'm gonna hold off on like naming cosplayers because there's probably like an NDA where they've been, because like I know from talking to cosplayers both in Magic and out of Magic, they're usually contacted like 3 or 4 months in advance to be able to make the cosplay to then like be able to like do the thing they want. So there's a high chance that like people like Olivia, Tappy, Christine have already been reached out to.
Absolutely.
And are just not allowed to say anything yet.
Yeah. Well, and we know Olivia's on, right? That's already announced. And the other part of that is like, why haven't you should have announced it 2 days ago before everyone bought passes.
So like a big complaint that I have about Magic 30, and it's a similar complaint that I have for another Magic convention a month later, or actually it's like a few weeks later for Magic Summit, is that there is not a lot of information ahead of people buying tickets, right? Like the Magic Summit gets like some passes for like being a small outfit, but they're a small outfit essentially trying to run a Magic Fest. So like they like definitely chose like a very large scale for their first event. Right. But like both events are expecting people to like buy badges. Magic 30's like big selling point is the 30th anniversary of Magic and the celebration that comes with it. And Magic Summit is, look at all of these creators coming. Don't you want to hang out with these creators? But like neither of them really are selling you on like the physical event itself.
The one thing I like to defend Summit over, because there are issues for both in a different way that we will get to, but with Summit, at least to what you said, they've never done a Magic Fest before. This is something totally different. The fact of what they've been able to accomplish is like kind of wild for like Brandon Sanderson's convention company teams with Magic content creator to come up with full convention event that is competing with Magic 30. And I think like the big glaring punch in the eye it's accomplished is like what they are doing to succeed is the thing that feels like is missing to some extent from what Magic 30 is doing, and is also the lowest hanging fruit thing to some extent.
Yeah. So I don't want to like, because I've already had my brain leak out of my skull today talking about Magic Summit and my issues with the way that they're using content creators. But like to shorten my point on that, is that a big complaint that I have about Magic Summit is that it is a vast amount of content creators all largely Commander-based creators for an event that's not Commander-centric.
Sure.
And so when you have 40 creators shilling your event, no offense to you, Kess, who all have very overlapping, cannibalized communities, there are going to be people whose affiliate links don't hit the benchmarks needed for their event to be comped.
Sure.
And so when people are praising Magic Summit for, oh, look at their diversity in creators, look at how many creators they're inviting, how come Wizards isn't doing that? Also, look at Magic Summit, they've invited so many creators, it's going to be so great because they're getting to go to this event. Well, they're paying for their event.
Right. With
and they have to, and with the hopes that they sell X amount of tickets to cover flights and a hotel. So it's really disingenuous for me to see some of the Twitter discourse prop up Magic Summit on the backbone of creators when they're essentially treating creators in the same way that Magic 30 is, except at least they already have a badge.
Well, I wouldn't call it the same because one is exclusive, right? Magic 30 is to a lot of creators being like, oh, we're not talking to you. Sorry, if you want to come, you have to pay for it. Where Summit is, we want you to come. We'll let you come for free. If you want to pay your way here, great. Or if you want to earn it through this thing, also great.
It goes to the same problem that I have.
Do you know what happened with the DreamHack event as well?
Yes. So my thing with the DreamHack event is one. DreamHack historically doesn't really do a whole lot with influencers to begin with. This is just experience I have as someone who's worked in esports. So influencers getting badges and some of them getting food stipends is first of all, people getting food vouchers as creators at an event is not common.
Sure.
Right? If you and I have both probably had creator badges at PAX, you fend for yourself. You got your badge. Congrats. The difference I have with any other event and something like Magic Summit is holistically selling itself on the backbone of look at all these creators.
Fair.
As marketing promotion and not treating them the same way that other cons that would be using creators as aggressively for marketing and giving them way less.
Sure. And
right?
That's kind of a point
that's
where...
just a huge complaint that I have for both events. Right. Is that both of your events are going to be sold on who's going to be there. And the fact that there are going to be creators that are going to 30, whether they are sponsored, featured, comped, whatever, that is going to drive people to want to go to that event on top of the fact that it's Magic's 30th celebration.
Well, I guess the point with Magic 30 is more that it's not being sold on creators going.
But it's not
really.
So that's the thing that I'm trying to say is that both events are to an extent being sold on, whether intentionally or unintentionally, on the back of creators who are not being properly compensated.
Well, I guess my thought. Well, sure, yes. I guess Magic 30 is specifically choosing not to promote anyone that's
but realistically, that is how it's being promoted, right? There's definitely non-creators who aren't us, right? Who are going, oh wow, I saw a Tappy tweet that she bought her ticket, and I saw Kess bought his ticket, and I saw Prof said that he's thinking about going. I might get to play Commander with those guys. I'm going to buy my Magic 30 ticket.
Sure.
Right? Even if Magic 30 isn't saying Kess, Tappy, and Prof are going, Kess, Tappy, and Prof going is a deciding factor for people.
Sure. And I guess the thought I had, because the thing that we're living with is that this event sold out within 6 hours, etc.
Oh, it's probably going to be bots. I have a high chance that Wizards is going to look at those ticket purchases, realize that there is a 45% bot, and do what a lot of cons do of resending those purchases. New York Comic Con has had to do that a lot lately, because it's hard to properly combat bots. So you just kind of accept that there's going to be a percent, usually around 30-ish, that is bought by bots. They take the time to figure out which of those tickets are bot tickets, and then they just return them back to the pool. And they just have to keep doing that until there are essentially no bot tickets, or very, very few that it's no different than scalpers.
Which is we'll learn soon if there are.
I'm guessing, but I'm hoping that even though this looks like a very slapdash event, that they have the understanding that 35 to like 40% of your tickets were probably bought, especially the Black Lotus package.
Sure.
There's no way that sold out in like an hour just by whales.
Well, it depends. Part of that is also how limited it is, right? Is it?
Yeah. I'm just skeptical as someone who lives on the internet that like anything that sells out that quickly is not like highly percentile towards bots.
Because the thing that like looked very bot purchase is the one that the like pack from home set where like you get a mystery.
Yeah.
The value on that was like higher than actually what you were paying because a mystery booster box itself is worth like $300. So like
that's why I have an open mind.
So that there's definitely vibes of it. I'm like, that seems like scalpers figuring out how to get what's on there. But okay, so
but that's not really about cons.
Well, the more to the point of the DreamHack is how DreamHack entered the Magic community, though, was here's a tweet. Everyone lists their favorite content creator. We're going to give all of them a blanket invite, the same invite, regardless of how
size
they previously been compensated to go to these events. And I mean, kind of the holistic point that we're trying, I guess me and Ben were trying to make over the podcast is like some of this is stemming from just a lack of centralization because there are events that have the brain power, like what happened at the CFB version of a command, like the different command fests, some of them were very well run that compensated the creators they were using to advertise their event well. Some of them didn't do that well. Some of them didn't do it at all, thinking that like, oh, we'll just say we're doing a command fest and whoever lives in Seattle is going to show up. And
yeah. So I think that the way that the DreamHack won, and I don't know exactly, even though I know that side of DreamHack to some extent, is that when you look at Magic, it's very difficult to like tell who's like a real, like I shouldn't say the word real. There are a lot of people who have very large followings in Magic that have those followings not because they're Magic creators. And so it's sometimes very difficult to find Magic creators the same way that you find like a Fortnite creator. So like that, like there's not a lot of Magic creators aren't part of like ad agencies or influencer groups. There is no, what is a Magic creator to you and me might not be considered a Magic creator to somebody else, right? Like, we obviously are Commander players and you play Modern, so like you know some of the Modern creators on like YouTube and Twitch, I assume. I don't. I know a lot of Legacy creators, but like Commander players, there's like a very low chance that they know who like Bosch and Roll is.
Sure.
Right? But like people who know who Bosch and Roll are might not know who like, I don't know, Mental Misplay.
Yeah.
And so I can see the problem for DreamHack being, well, there's a lot of things that make someone a Magic creator versus any other game that we've ever hosted.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just take a large batch, see what happens when they come to our event, and then like, you know, fine tune the process going forward.
Right.
Because it is a huge cost to them to give like, I don't know what the exact number was, but like give 50 people badges. That's like 50 less people that can like be in the venue.
Sure.
That they could have just like sold. I mean, that's why like not every single person who applies for a creator badge, even if they are the same size, don't get them.
Right.
Because you're like limiting the number of people who can physically attend. This is why, like, for example, PAX kicked Riot out of PAX West, because traditionally Riot would do their summer finals at PAX West, and there were less people who were going to PAX West for PAX West. They were going to watch the LCS finals.
Sure. Yeah, your event is now too big, and the proportion of people attending it that would need to have badges for our entire convention are removing people that want those badges to be able.
Yeah. So even though it's not the same thing to say like, oh, Magic creators are taking badges away from DreamHack participants, but it is still like the objective choice to like have like 50 Magic creators have badges is still 50 less people who are going to do all of DreamHack.
Well, but that also like proportionality to the size of an event.
Yeah,
and obviously we're just saying numbers. It's not like
yeah. I'm not talking about actual scale. I just want people to understand that like when a company makes a decision to give a set number of free badges, that is a decision that like has to be like, oh well, like we're going to do this.
What is the cost and ROI on this decision?
Because there was also streamers and. There was regular streamers, there were CSGO streamers, like there were a bunch of different creator types that were given badges not very strenuously. Like there wasn't a whole lot of betting and stuff. It was the same thing for like streamers. And it was because they wanted to have a very diverse group of people at DreamHack. But that's not really the point. I have the perspective of somebody who like was at DreamHack and like knew people from different communities at DreamHack and knew that DreamHack did the same. They wanted to test out do we do this more as like an influencer type of thing the way other cons are? Because traditionally DreamHack is a festival around competitive esports.
I guess I was using more DreamHack as an example of another moment that happened this year in an event trying to figure out how do you invite Magic influencers to your event or Magic content creators.
Yeah, I see. I kind of went on a tangent.
Had its own version of stumbling blocks. Like none of these have worked. is more.
I guess like one of the thoughts that I have is that, and knowing what I know about how much time has gone into getting Magic 30 put together, I think it is very clear that like Magic wants an event that feels like Gen Con, where like, oh, here's all these different packages and they allow you to do different things without realizing that like you're not Gen Con and like your player base isn't going to be as excited for everything in different packages. And instead of doing these like weird, like scaling in price Kickstarter-esque packages, they should have just done a Magic Fest.
So like we've been on the cast pretty big proponents for a while of Magic Fests having a entry fee, whatever it is. And in this, it's basically $160 is a good thing. Right? Like,
I definitely agree that like $160 to go to a Magic Fest for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and then potentially having to pay for certain extra things inside.
Yeah, and even like
fair and balanced,
with like
and
free
good.
Draft entry or what Wizards did, which is like here's a bunch of packs that we just have left in the warehouse, is fine. I think that all like works for me because one of the problems that the old Magic Fest system had, famously, like at one point artists were on strike because there was no money being made. Like the Magic Fests that were being budgeted were basically break even, and then add the layer of safety.
Oh yeah, that was also true in like the GP system. Was that like, because the GPs were so scaled towards competitive play, you would get some people who would come in to do free play or do the side events, but like artists were never the selling point, and so you would have artists at tables all day selling like a handful of prints and then getting tipped for signatures.
Right, and because I would say that like I think a Magic-esque Gen Con experience where you pay $160 for your weekend badge and all of the things that used to be at a Magic Fest are there, add on, or everything that was at like Magic Fest Seattle or Magic Fest Vegas are there, where there's panels, there's meet and greets, there's a command zone area, and there's a one or two major tournaments, maybe a PTQ every week that every day of the con that you can enter. And that is a slam dunk event and is super feasible that like I don't and like because an argument, a problem I've had with the Command Fest model is the lack of any other community but Commander, right? Like there isn't cool drafts there. There isn't a modern PTQ or any.
Yeah, and I definitely have agreed with that argument. I know that some people are like, but it's called Command Fest. And it's like, yeah, but when you went to like GP Richmond Legacy, you still got to play a standard event. You still got to play a modern event. You still got to draft, enter Commander side events. So like, why can't a Command Fest just like be running Baldur's Gate drafts? And I
was on the front line, like that argument like hurts my brain because I was literally in Grand Prix LA on the floor fighting for Command Fest to exist at Magic Fest and for there to be open environments forever. Like,
you're definitely preaching to the choir here that like the idea that like Magic 30 should have just been the best parts of a Command Fest and GP Vegas's made into one thing. That's like what this should have been. Instead, this feels very much like the way San Diego Comic-Con and like New York Comic-Con are done, where you're paying for certain amounts of access, but like your additional access is just more Magic, right? When you pay for like certain amounts of access at San Diego Comic-Con, you're like guaranteed a seat in Hall H, which is like fire. You're like guaranteed to like go to this after party and like do this thing and do that thing and do that thing. And guess what? You bought that badge because you want the whole San Diego Comic-Con experience. Because it's San Diego Comic-Con, there's going to be anime, comic books, TV shows, right? Magic is one thing. Scaling up packages to experience additional magic, if all it is just more packs, more stuff, isn't as exciting.
And once again, did sell out, and bots were probably a part of it, but that does happen. So like from Wizards' perspective, they slam dunked it to some extent, hopefully. Or not hopefully. Hopefully there is bots that have made them be like, ooh, maybe we should have done this better. But there's no way for them not to have sold out the way they did, and that's what their plan was. But the point being, and this is like the question a lot of people have, which is like, why is this worth this much money? Like right now, if you had told me that Command Fest was happening, but like all the Command Zone crew was going to be there, plus XYZ cosplayers, plus these all of the CAG and the RC, or the 6 pro players, 6 Hall of Famers are going to be there, plus XYZ, then that $350 price tag makes sense. Right now, I'm and I'm like, hey, I could go to Coachella for that for $50 more.
Yeah, like in my brain, I looked at that and I was like, that's what like the premier pass of like a well-established con is. And I'm getting a lot out of that experience. I'm getting to go to a VIP section that's going to have a ton of celebrities in it. I'm probably going to get first of the line of every meet and greet. Like when you pay for $350 for most conventions, first of all, a lot of conventions don't even have that anymore because they'd rather just have a bunch of people go.
Yeah.
But like if I pay $350 at like literally any con, and I'll like probably do research for this for my article, you were getting so much out of that isn't just stuff. You were getting a ridiculous experience out of the weekend. You essentially bought like a fast pass for Disney.
Right.
Where like any experience in memory you want to make is achievable because you dropped so much money. And I'm going to be honest, when I look at the $350 for Magic 30, I'm like, what did I spend $350 on besides stuff?
And there's stuff like if they're like, hey, we had a creator pass, there's going to be 200 creators that were allowed to enter this thing that they'll announce on their own time who's going. But instead of on Monday when this was announced, every person on my feed being like, wait, what the hell is going on? I don't even, who's going to this? It would have been me and you and other people being like, oh,
and
yeah.
Also, what I hate is that they announced Magic 30. We knew about this for like a month and a half.
Yeah.
Like 2 months is when they like said, hey, we're definitely doing Magic 30. It's definitely going to be this weekend. It's definitely going to be in Vegas. Tickets and all other details are going to come. What we got for waiting for a month and a half, 2 months, is like baffling. Like the amount of information we got could have been announced.
Well,
when they announced Magic 30.
I feel like what we were waiting for, or what was taking so long, was them counting how many packs they had to give away in these packages and making sure that they had them.
But you know what I mean? Like, if you look at like how bare bones there's going to be panel 1 sentence description, panel 1 sentence description, 6,
and then like
the fact that like the VML wasn't announced with it, that they're running like a safe space gaming area. That's not in the official page. I only know about that because I follow the co-chairs of VML on Twitter, that they announced it after Magic 30 was announced. Like, why isn't that on the website?
And some of this is like, and they've admitted it themselves, not publicly, at least behind some amount of like individuals. Like, this is a rushed event, right? This was an event that they didn't plan on doing 4 months ago, that they're now doing two months ago, and they're trying to figure out what it looks like. And they, I believe, are using an outside firm to do a lot of it, which adds its own layer of like that firm learning on the fly what this community is interested in. And the one thing that this does feel like, and it is happening at the same time of which happened last night, is like the Whatnot.
Oh God, that was a
event that happened last night, right? It has a little bit of the vibe of like,
I feel like Whatnot went to Post and was like, hey, we have a lot of money and we want to do an event that's cool. And Post was like, yeah, that sounds dope, man, because Post seems to be like a very like chill, laid back dude.
Yep.
And then from everything I've seen from everyone's social media posts for people that were there, it's like something Post could have done without being sponsored by Whatnot, like on Twitch. Like it's the same amount of like put togetherness and planning. one of my friends shared a picture, because I had like stopped watching at one point, that like it's a camera angle and you can see a garbage can in front of the table. And it's like,
and like, I don't, because we can talk about Whatnot for another forever, and we don't have infinite time. So I just, but more the point is like, we got actual Post Malone celebrity level kind of high profile people, and that's it in a small event that we're streaming. Is like, it has more of a vibe of that, where you're spending it more on the almost the whale side of the coin of who's going to be attending this event than an at-large community, which has its own issues. But I think, and forever beyond this, and this is the problem with Command Fest that people have complained about, right? Is like, yes, if Command Fest were happening at the same time that we were getting Magic Fests back, or the old GP model where there were other weekend tournament series that were happening, I think people would complain a lot less about like Command Fest not including other formats. But they were the only conventions that were happening, and now the next only convention that's happening is this version, which is like, does feel like they were like, hey, Commander is only here as an adjacency. Like, this is more of a limited event in some ways, that we're going to bring out really cool limited events that are happening. But at the same
time for me to talk about the grant.
Yeah, I do. That's what I wanted to jump to next, because we have about 10 minutes. So let's talk.
So, this made my brain hurt on Twitter because a lot of people didn't understand why it's problematic. So let me just like explain this to you folks. So the New Perspective grant, in theory, is very cool. They're saying, we know that there are marginalized people who otherwise have not been able to come to Magic events in the past, and we want to create a way for them to be able to come to the event. Baller, right? Like, sick. And Magic acknowledging diversity and inclusion is like their worst stat, and they're going to fix it. And then you start to read more. There's only 10 slots. And you're like, that seems like a very small number. And I've had talks with people at Wizards, and this was kind of the test the waters. If they do another big event like this again, it'll and probably when they start bringing back Magic Fest, the number will be not 10. It'll definitely be larger. But even for a test phase, 10 is a shockingly small number. Considering the amount of scholarships that are given out by Gen Con, that are given out by GDC, like, it is a shockingly small number. And then it's also essentially a general scholarship. Like, I understand that it's for marginalized people, but they define marginalized people as literally anyone who's not like a cis white man. So like, you're not doing a black and brown and there's 10 people. You're not doing a queer and that's another 10 people. And then I hate to say it this way, but like miscellaneous other marginalized people, and that's 10 people. It is anything that is not a cis white straight male can apply for this. That's a lot of people.
Well, most of the world.
Most of the world is going to, like, I don't know if you saw, there are so many like large creators who said they're applying for this, which I'm not going to get into my thoughts about that, who are applying to this, who to an extent have the ability to go to literally any other Magic event ever, where this is, hey, there are people who could never have gone, who have never been able to go to a Magic event and could never even imagine going to this event. This is what that grant's for. So I'm going to leave that thought on large creators applying for it. But like, if you've looked at the application, which I have pulled up on my screen, it asks for your preferred name, which obviously makes a lot of sense because there might be trans people or non-binary folks or just people who don't align with their legal name. Pronouns, dope, fine. Legal first and last name, obvious. Email, and then do you or have ever identified, I hate the fact that this says have ever, identified with a demographic that is underrepresented in Magic the Gathering community. We encourage applications from those marginalized on the basis of race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, disability, and or veteran or military enrollment status. Well, that's a really broad paintbrush. It's only open up to people who live in the U.S. or a U.S. territory. That's interesting. Do you agree to do your own travel arrangements? Yeah, that part makes sense because like you're getting a $2,000 stipend to like spend as you choose. And are you 18 years or older? Sure, fine, makes sense. Here's the like really fucked up part, and I don't think like a lot of people didn't grasp this. Please provide links to and or descriptions of your involvement in the Magic community. This may include social media links, streams, podcasts, links to virtual or live events, how-tos, reviews, articles, deck building tips, work at a local game shop, game development, and or other contributions. And if you go and look at the Magic 30 thing, it says to like be creative and unique. That is not something you do if you're trying to get truly marginalized and disenfranchised people to be able to get a grant. Because guess what? If you were truly disenfranchised and marginalized out of a community that you still want to take part in, you're probably not doing a whole lot that's like a direct contribution to the community. Right? Like if you're a queer trans woman living in the South and you don't feel like any of your local game stores are safe, you've seen the Magic discourse on Reddit, you don't know that like there are parts of Magic Twitter that are supportive, you have never contributed. You probably have never thought to do anything to contribute to the greater Magic the Gathering community. That person who saw the new perspective grants and got really excited about applying is going to see that part and be like, oh, so they want like marginalized influencers.
Well,
which is completely different from what the section in the Magic 30 page says.
They like kind of combined two different, they like kind of put it all in one bucket, and it was like, no, you need to separate. You need to have this.
You need to separate it. You needed to make it more than 10. Like, it is objectively a good thing.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not like, even though I have a myriad of complaints about it, it is objectively a good first step. It is still extremely problematic that you are having a wide swath of marginalized people compete for 10 slots, and there are potentially going to be people, because we know nothing about the decision tree for the committee, that are not going to get to go because someone like myself or like another marginalized creator who has like contributed to the community gets a slot.
Right.
And like, to be objective, like I work for a nonprofit. I'm broke as shit. Like, I can only afford or ever have an opportunity to go to cons when like I'm paid to go. So like I do fit in that category of like there is no other universe where I go to a Magic Fest that is not in my area without financial assistance. But I also feel a little shitty that I'm not applying for a creator pass, and instead I get to take my 10 years of contributions to the Magic community against, you know, another marginalized person who just started writing how-to articles.
Right.
Like my video about why I should be picked is going to have, you know, Sheldon Menery saying something about like the contribution I have to the Magic community. That is not a fair matchup.
Absolutely.
Like in any universe. And like, not to call them out, but I love Chase. Mana Curves is amazing. They do a lot for the community outside of just their amazing Commander content. Chase is considering applying. Like, Joe Random marginalized person in the community is potentially not going to have an application as good as Chase's.
Right. Well, and that's kind of the first point, right? Like there should be a creator application that has nothing to do with your background, and they should consider this when they're doing it. And the fact that they don't know who they should be inviting already is an entire different issue on its own. And then there should be a grant for marginalized communities to be able to get in that is much more widespread and not based on like how good of a content creator are you for us, then we'll let you in. And that
like I don't understand what, like I'm gonna be, and so to cut this short so that you can close the segment, what that last question should have been is what has Magic done for you, or what is the impact Magic has had on you in the last 30 years?
Mm-hmm.
So obviously there aren't everybody hasn't been playing Magic for 30 years, but what has the 30-year history of Magic impacted your life?
Right.
And I think that is a great way for a marginalized person to really convey just how meaningful Magic and the Gathering, as you know, we've been saying a lot over the COVID times about how important the Gathering part is. I think that should have been the deciding factor. Somebody saying, you know, Magic, you know, taught me English, or Magic gave me people to hang out with when I was the other, you know, in my school. Magic gave me friends no matter where I went because I was I was a military kid and I went from base to base, but I could always find people play Magic. Those stories should be what it's about.
Right.
And yes, like you're still competing, but then it's like a normal thing, right? You're competing on who wrote like the better, SAT essay, and not who's the better creator, who's made a better contribution to Magic. Because I know some people who saw that section and were immediately turned off from applying.
Well, and there's an argument of like the more competitive you become in that area, the more likely Wizards should have just invited you in the first place.
Yeah. So I understand that there's a lot of people that are like, oh, well, like, would you have wanted them to do nothing? Obviously not. And I think that like that's just like a reductive statement to make to creators like myself and Michelle who like spoke out about the scholarship. That's not what we're saying. We're saying is that like this was not the best first attempt. And I wish it was iterated out. I wish somebody looked at that last question and said, hey, this sounds more like a creator question.
Right.
Not a get marginalized people into the door question.
And I think that's like a good point to kind of take with everything we're saying is that these aren't like, these are constructive criticisms, right? And it is like, you bring these up so that Wizards does it better the next time or fixes it now.
Yeah, so I've been told that there's no way that there's going to be more grants. I have been pushing very heavily to everyone I've spoken to at WotC, and they're taking into consideration of like trying to do something like a BIPOC lounge like Gen Con had.
Yeah.
Of like a designated area where like marginalized people. So no, the VML is like a safe play area.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily like I want something that's a little bit removed from play that allows marginalized people to organically sit down and communicate and grow and share experiences. Because for some people that are going to be going to Magic 30, this is going to be their first time going to a Magic event and meeting other Magic players that aren't their local players. And there's a chance, just like I had when I went to my first PTQ and met the first 4 other Black people I ever knew playing Magic, there's going to be people who are going to go to that and meet the first other Indian person they've ever met playing Magic, or the first other trans person. And I think there's a lot of value in gaming conventions having lounge spaces or not designated play spaces that takes away from people that want to play games to just sit down and talk and have that safe experience.
The one, like, I guess, silver lining in all of this is I, like, do know that Wizards is noticing where these failures have been amongst this whole process. And they're excusing it with, this is a last minute event. This is the first time we've ever done something like this. And we are learning what we're supposed to be doing here. And we will be better for the future events. It just, they also are doing it. And so there's a little bit of egg on it. And it's good to learn the lessons. And we hope they do learn those lessons.
My 100% final thought is that people need to understand that, like, when someone is critiquing something, it's not that we're saying that it's necessarily bad. It's we're passionate and we want to see it be better.
Right.
And if we don't say where it can be better, then like how does Wizards, how does, Kingdoms, how does the group putting on Monarch like know what to do better? If no one says, hey, this is a 7, it can easily be a 10 with just like these small tweaks. How do they make that leap to a 10? And so like when you see people make critiques, take that internal knowledge with you to not just dismiss what people are saying as, oh, hey, well, you're just punching down because it's their first event. No, we obviously know it's we're not dumb. We know this is the first event.
Also, like, first event is, they did manage the Grand Prix circuit and Magic Fest and Command Fest. And
no, Kess, you understand? We're being bullies. It's Magic's first event. We're being bullies.
Like, one of the reasons I was really excited to have you on is that, I'm fine and Ben is fine, right? Like, I can afford to go to this event. I'm going to this event. To your point, that Blizzards is now benefiting to some extent because I'm going to be able to go to this event and afford it. And I'm very, very, very lucky to be able to do that. But the fact that, like, Shivam, who there is a panel that he should be on happening at this event and is in halfway being advertised to be on this event, was not invited, can't go because it's not comped, etc. or Chase, who also does a lot for the community, isn't going. And the few people that are getting, having to go through this very weird application process that doesn't seem to be accomplishing what's supposed to. That's why we're having this episode exist. It was just me complaining I didn't get to go. I can maybe make a 5-second TikTok about that, and I'm going. So it's a little weird because I don't know who I'm going to hang out with. I know like 1 or 2 of my friends are going to be there, and right now
I will hopefully get my grant and we can play Commander in person. Unlike that time we went and got ramen instead.
I honestly, I don't know ramen instead, but there are the people that I know that I'm going to see. Some of them, the tickets going to this are more expensive than if I had just flown to their hometown.
Oh yeah, I liked EK's shitpost of the what was it, like the 15-person Airbnb.
Yeah, right. I technically think that my hotel plus entry to this event could pay for an Airbnb for a weekend in LA. And anyone in this Discord, if you want to fly out and hang out,
don't get me started. I've already been talking to Joe Johnson about how we could do our own mini, much better
Magic Fest LA,
like Magic Fest, like minorities, and it still would be better, and we could definitely get enough sponsors for more than 10 people to go.
Yeah. So, but
thanks for having me.
Once again, thank you so much for joining and jumping on. Where can people find you on the internet in general?
You can find me writing articles every 2 weeks over at Commander's Herald. That's commandersherald.com. No apostrophe, obviously, because it's a URL. And you can find me on Twitter at Amanda, T as in taxi, N as in net, Stevens, Stevens. And that is the only place you'll find me ever talking about Magic. And after today, I've decided I probably won't talk about Magic on the internet anymore because it can be a headache. But yeah.
Right about Magic. You can always come on here to talk.
Yeah.
Awesome. And now we'll go back to the previously recorded podcast. I'm going to magically change a shirt. All right. So continuing the conversation at hand, Ben, are you excited for the Magic 30 event?
Very much so. I'm super sad that it's costing me as much as it is, because I am going to get to the end of this summer and this tour and all of the travel, and I've spent money on a lot of things, and that's this just was one of those things this morning when I was buying it where I was like, man, this is just a lot of money. I'm just sinking into another thing that I want to do, but I'm really excited to do it. And I had so much fun at Gen Con. It was so fun to be around all of our friends and Magic people. I love it so much. It's my favorite thing. So I think Magic 30 is going to be amazing. When we were at Gen Con, we did one of our famous chaos drafts. Got a big group of us together. It was really, really, really fun. Gavin joined us for that one. He was there at Gen Con, and always loves to do those. And so we were talking when we were at Gen Con about plans for 30, and he was, we got to do another one of these. We got to do a big one of these. And so I've got all the packs here, which I'm excited for. And I'm really excited for this modern event. I obviously have to get a deck together and figure out what the hell I'm going to play, so I even have a chance, because it is my dream. It is my dream to get the beta draft. It's the big win.
I believe in you.
Maybe Blue Red Murktide. Seems like a deck that I would just play well, probably.
There's a sick. I was on Nikachu's morning stream this morning, which everyone should check that out. It was cool. We went over underplayed Modern Horizons cards, that can come out of nowhere and do something. And there's a deck. It's based off of the red 2 flashback for 5. Reveal cards from the top of your library. Whatever you reveal, do that much damage to a player. It's a card for Modern Horizons, but the deck is playing deserts and Otacron worms and Emrakul's and Ramamat ruins, and that's it. And this card, and then the Cascade retrace card. So it hits it every time, and it's just I'm going to cast this card. I'm going to dome you for 15, and then I'm going to kill you with lands that do damage to some extent. And it's it apparently it's doing some work, so you can play that deck.
That's sweet. Now I was looking today at some of the decks. I mean, I pay attention every week to what's still, a lot of the same decks are still good.
Yeah.
Yorion Money Pile is still really good. You still obviously have Murktide. Definitely Hammer is still a deck. Burn is being played. So a lot of the decks that we know already are good. But that's why I was thinking Murktide is the most popular. It's just the deck that I think I know that style pretty well, so I would probably be able to play it pretty well. And then the other option is just play Burn. The other option is just like I'm like just play Burn, because I've never played Burn before at an event, but it's like games are over quickly, and but whatever it is, I will get in some work on that. I'm definitely excited about it, unless I last minute decide that I have a brew that's going to win me the whole thing, which is
Do not play a brew, Ben. Pick a real deck. It could be a fun deck. It doesn't have to be the top 3 things, but it should be a deck you have a chance of winning with. This is an expensive event.
Yeah, so it's a fair point.
All right.
All right, I think I'm pretty much wrapped.
I mean, I'll be there for sure, and I'll be in the command zone, and I'll be hanging out, and I'm gonna have a blast. So I'm definitely excited for it. I just I wish more people were excited for it. And
it bums me out too.
We're lucky that we can afford it, and it's messed up that there are people that I know that really deserve to go from a whole slew of different backgrounds that just won't be able to make it. And that's, I think, kind of the and there was no there's an easy solution to this that just there's no fixing it. So but as always, thank you to Channel Fireball both for being a great TO for many, many years, being a champion of the eras that we were working on fondly, as well as being the host of this podcast. Thank you to Ultra Pro for sponsoring the podcast as well. Thank you to all of our patrons. Big salute to all of you. And thank you, Ben, for coming back onto the podcast.
No, I'm excited to be here, and I will be resuming my last few tour dates. I did get to see a lot of you guys in Orlando, a bunch of you guys I saw in Seattle, and the last few dates on the tour are coming up. One of them will have already happened by the time you guys hear this. There's San Francisco this weekend, and then I've got Chicago, New York, and the LA show, which is the last of all. So if you haven't checked it out, go to benbatemantour.com. It's been really, really, really fun, and I would love to meet any of you guys that can make it to Chicago, New York, or LA.
Absolutely. Right. Thanks, everyone. We'll talk to you all next week,
I guess.
This has been a production of Time Traveler Media, sending podcasts into the future.